Would you rather be an NBA Hall of Famer and never win a championship, or an NBA bit player or role player and win a championship? This is the Royal City Hoops podcast, and we're going to talk about the all no rings team. It's one of those debates where people talk about if he doesn't win a championship, they're not one of the greats. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory. I think he can still be an amazing player, an all-time player, one of the top greatest players always, top 10 even if you were that good and never win a championship. Now, that's not the case. If you were to sit around and go through the top 10 players of all time, they probably all have rings. But there are still a number of great players who never won a championship for a variety of reasons, and we're going to go through them. We're going to break them down into 3 different categories. Now, these have to be players, if you're going to do this on your own, that you have seen play. These are players that I have seen play. So, given that I'm 46 years old, Elgin Baylor is not on this list. He's like, if you go on the internet, he is the number 1 player all time to have never won a ring. And he's not on my list because I never saw Elgin Baylor play, and that's just ridiculous for me to comment on that. Now, the 3 categories we're going to have one category that is literally just the dream team. We're going to have players in their twilight. So these are guys who've played at least 10 years or are getting close to the end who haven't won a ring. And then we're just going to go with your regular retired guys. Now, the dream team's the easiest one to get out of the way. We're talking about the Olympics, the first dream team ever. And that list is John Stockton, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and Chris Mullin. Really hard to not have those guys on your list. Even if it wasn't, you didn't have a dream team list of no rings. Those guys are all Hall of Famers. They are all-time greats. Charles Barkley and Karl Malone are 2 of the greatest power forwards ever. I don't know how you couldn't have them in your top 10. John Stockton, same point guard. Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin's an amazing shooter. Like, Chris Mullin's the kind of player that if he were playing now, you'd see some. And what you're seeing Duncan Robinson do, you would see Chris Mullin do, and even more. Mullin was just an unbelievable shooter, and it just too bad that he's not around to play in this era as a guy who likes shooting. The next group that we're going to go through is going to be pretty straightforward. These are guys that you see play now that, hey, if they win a ring, great. If they don't, top of the list for me right now is maybe the front of the mind is CP3 because he went to the finals last year and he was so close, but he didn't make it. He is somebody that for me, I wasn't a big Chris Paul fan up until he went to OKC. And when he went to OKC, I was like, what's this going to be? He led those guys down the stretch, clutch minutes. They were one of the best clutch teams in the last 5 minutes of games as per statistics that season. And he really mentored those guys, and they were a really, really good team and really surprisingly good given their scenario. Also on that list will be Russell Westbrook. Westbrook is what my kid calls him. My 8-year-old and his cousin, my nephew, call him Russell Westbrook. He's a Hall of Famer. You know, hard to argue with it. Like him, hate him, whatever you want to do. He's chasing a ring with the Lakers, and he's got another guy who's on my all-time no-rings team for players in their twilights, which is Carmelo, both of them on the Lakers. If you go back and you look at some highlights of Melo in Denver, he's got some crazy dunks like on guys, and he's just a scoring machine. Nowadays, he would be a 4-man and he would destroy. He's become a much better three-point shooter. I mean, last season I think he shot 40%. He's shooting 39% this year. He's the player on the Lakers that I really feel bad for because he's doing exactly what they brought him in to do, and the other guys aren't holding up their end of the deal other than LeBron. Westbrook hasn't figured it out. He may not. He's playing hard. AD is not playing because he's injured, and the rest of the roster is a dumpster fire. So I don't know what else to say about that. 2 guys on the list also chasing rings. Paul George went to the Clippers, joined forces with Kawhi, trying to get his ring. He's a phenomenal player. If you remember his time back in Indiana when he was the guy, he was great. The year he played in OKC with Westbrook, for 3/4 of the season, he was in the MVP category conversation or leading it. It was hard not to have that conversation without him being mentioned. Next up is another MVP in James Harden, who's joined forces with KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn trying to get his ring. But hey, season might end and he's got his player option. He might be saying it's time for me to move on because this is just too crazy with Kyrie. But that's me being judgmental. Blake Griffin's on my list. He was a stud. He is, I don't know, Hall of Famer. I guess you'd have to compare his stats. But he's in Brooklyn too, looking for a ring. Made a good choice. He plays well for them. He's a solid role player, and he's accepted who he's not anymore. And he tries to play within himself. And I think he's a nice add for their team. Somebody you could put on that list who is, I guess, a current player. He was retired. He just got signed by the Celtics 10 days. Joe Johnson. I don't know if he's on my list. He was on some of the lists I read, so I just scribbled him down in my notes to be there. But I don't know if I'm going to put him on my all-time no rings team for players in their twilight. Now we're going to get to the big group. These are guys who are retired, who are not on the dream team, who are not in the twilight of their career, who never won a ring. And there's some pretty big names on this. Reggie Miller, a phenomenal player. What do you say? These are all names that you could talk till you're blue in the face about them, but they never won a ring. And the debate that people have, and I can hear my friend Mac telling me now, yeah, I would be an all-star and a Hall of Famer, no problem, and not win a ring. And I have other friends who would be like, no, second place is just first loser. Everybody's a loser if you don't win a chip, which is a little harsh. Talk that way to your kid. That's not real inspiring and motivating. If you don't win everything, you're a loser. Great. Yeah. What happened to unconditional love? So we've got Reggie Miller. The next names on the list, Allen Iverson, Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, Chris Webber, Steve Nash, T-Mac, Yao Ming, Vince Carter. Those are the prominent names. Dominique Wilkins is on there. Dikembe Mutombo is on there. I've got Sean Kemp. Now, there's a few other question marks that are these guys really all-timers? They had good careers, some great seasons. Tim Hardaway was in there, Amari Stoudemire, Brandon Roy, whose career got cut short by injury. And then I have Mark Price and Brad Daugherty, who those Cavs teams that got run over by Michael Jordan and had really bad luck, they were pretty good. And Mark Price was a hell of a player, and so was Brad Daugherty, but they're probably just on my list because I needed to make notes, and they're in here. But let's think about it. Do you want to be Rick Fox, or do you want to be T-Mac? At the end of the day, what career? And think about it. Don't think of it from an accomplishment standpoint. If you love basketball, do you want to be the stud highlight reel player who's out there every night scoring 30 or 40? T-Mac was a stud player, and in today's game, he would be perfect. He would eat Paul George alive. If we're talking about Paul George, T-Mac would just destroy a lot of those guys out there. And I would rather be him than Rick Fox. Say what you will about Rick Fox. Sure, he was married to Vanessa Williams. All right, we'll put that. That's 1 for him. He's got a chip. That's 2 for him. T-Mac got all the buckets. So let's just talk about it from a basketball standpoint. I would rather, not rather, but if you're giving me the pick, wouldn't you want to have thousands of points and play every night and be in the mix, carrying your team? I'm going to say yes, because most of us are the lunch bucket type of people. Not all of us are rock stars in life. I'd kind of like to be. I'm a role player in life in general. So I would take the winning the chip. Sure, that would be great, but yeah, I'll take all the points in the Hall of Fame. It's a pretty good accomplishment. What do you think? Who's on your list? Do you have a list? Previously, I did a list of the top 30 players in the NBA. I am going to do the all could have been team coming up. I'm going to be talking to my friend Calvin on the weekend, doing a podcast about what we're looking for going into the coming season or the rest of the season, right? What do you want to see coming into the rest of the season? What do you not want to see? I mean, I'm tired of watching the Lakers, and I'm probably still going to watch the Lakers because they're a great storyline. But anyhow, that's what we're going to be talking about. Like if you like, comment if you got something to say, and subscribe at your own risk. Thanks for listening.